Let's talk about all the books I recently DNF'd. And I compared the list from at least like the last 2 or 3 months, and I have 10 books to talk about, and I will talk about them starting from the book I got DNF'd the quickest and the book I DNF'd when I was a long way into it. So let's go. And the first book I'm gonna talk about is Sunrise on the Reaping, and this book I DNF'd it maybe after 2 chapters. It's a prequel to The Hunger Games, which was one of my favorite series when I was a teenager, and I reread this series I think 5 or 6 years ago. To me it still holds up, like the stories, the plot, the message behind the book still is a strong one. But yeah, I decided to read Sunrise on the Reaping. I didn't read the Ballad of Songbird and Snake. I watched the movie, which was the last movie I watched like 2 years ago. Did not like it, but yeah, let's talk about this. So yeah, I decided to DNF it quite quickly because I felt like, at least in the first 2 chapters, it was like a fan service book, because you saw all the characters you see later on in the Hunger Games. You saw like the father of Pita, you saw like, yeah, you saw characters, and I was like, it's a bit too much, at least in the first 2 chapters. And in this one, Image talked a lot about his love. I don't remember the name of his love, but it was named with multiple names, and I was like, oh, it's gonna bother me so much when he talks about her. And I was like, I already know how this story ends because it's a prequel, and that made me also realize that maybe I'm not the type of person who likes to read a prequel, because I already read the future books, the books that take place in the future. So I'm just prefer to not read it. Keep the memories I have with the original Hunger Games trilogy and just keep it at that. The next book I'm gonna talk about is a book I DNF'd just because I knew already not too much about this subject, but I knew enough, and it's Poet, Mystic, Widow, Wife. It's a non-fiction book about women in the Middle Ages, but last year I read a book about this topic also, because it's like one of my hyper fixation. I love reading about women in history, but also especially in the Middle Ages. So I already read a book about this topic last year. So this one I DNF'd it at 15% when I realized that the same ideas and subjects were being talked about. So I just was like, I already know this, I don't feel like I'm gonna learn a lot. So it's not fault of this book, it's just I knew already what it was gonna talk about. So yeah. The next one I'm gonna talk about is the Geographer's Map to Romance. I DNF'd it at 20%. I briefly talked about it in my London haul, because I hold a book also from this author. But yeah, I DNF'd it at 20%, just because I had a hard time getting into the writing, and also it's set in our world, but like maybe I think 200 years ago. But I felt like the author didn't really explain like the magic part of this world. To me, it lacked some world building, and also, yeah, the writing was a bit too whimsy, which again, I talked about this one in my London video, because I love whimsical things, like you can also see with my tattoos, I love like creatures and stuff like that, and just being whimsy, but I felt like the story was kind of hard of getting into because of that. So yeah, I DNF'd it. Then the next book I DNF'd is Honor at 23%, which is a shame because I loved the first book in this series, which was Fight. The second one, Protect, was okay, it was good, but not as good as the first one. But I was excited to finish this trilogy, especially with this kind of covers. I just love those covers. But to me, the plot was kind of not weird, but in this one, you follow a woman who has lost her husband less than a year ago, and she was pregnant when she lost her husband. And you follow the story, the love my god, you follow the romance she has with her neighbor who always had a crush on her since they were little, and he helped her during her birth, because she gave birth at her home and he's her neighbor. But then I felt like, not that I have any say in the grief of a person, but she felt already a lot of things for her neighbor when her husband was dead for maybe 6 months, and she was pregnant with her husband's baby. And I don't know, it felt kind of weird with the way that everything was written. Maybe I would continue, or maybe I would have finished the book if a bit more time had passed between the death of her husband and being attracted to somebody else, especially since she has a new kid to take care of. She already had 2 children, so that's quite a lot. And I don't know, I didn't really enjoy the relationship, the way they talked about each other, the sexual stuff. When I stopped, nothing sexual happened between the two of them, but you were in their thoughts. And also, since they were neighbors, they were sharing a wall, and it was his bedroom, her bedroom, like this. And so something sexual happened, but in each of their rooms. And I don't know, I didn't really like it. So yeah, that's why I DNF'd, sadly. Next is also a big disappointment, but I think all the books I DNF'd are big disappointments because I was excited to read them. And it's Heretic Behavior. I talked about this one in my 12 romantasy books. I'm excited to read about, like, on my TBR, the video I did. So yeah, I DNF'd this one at 23%. Because to me, and it's gonna be a common theme in the rest of the DNF I'm gonna talk about, it was just too, like, it made me feel miserable reading this book, because to me a book can be dark, but you need at least a little bit of hope, at least a little bit of light to keep reading, because if I feel miserable reading a book, I don't want to read it. That's not my goal when I'm reading, to feel this kind of emotion. So in this one you follow a young woman, and she was, like, enslaved, but for 23% it's just like hardships and being scared of people, and also as a woman, and it's linked to the church also, so religious violence, I'm gonna say. It was not fun at all. So yeah, I just decided to DNF this one, which is a shame because I also really enjoyed the cover, but it was not for me. The next one, which was also a dark romance, but this one a contemporary dark romance, is Leave Me Behind. I DNF'd this one at 28%. But this one was a disappointment because it started really strong. You follow a woman who's, like, in a secret organization in the army. Like, nobody knows about this type of unit. They are like criminals, but the government decide to take them and make a unit with them because they are fearless and stuff like that. So you follow a woman who goes to a new unit because she lost her old one because they died. But before that, she has, like, one last night of freedom, I'm gonna say. And she sleeps with somebody, and the sex scene was great. Nothing I would accept in real life, but in this book, amazing. So I was like, oh, good. It's gonna be, like, very tension-filled, but also dark. So that was good for me because tension could be also positive. So that was the little bit of light. But then she realized that the guy she slept with is the guy in her new unit, and they make her life a living hell. At the end of that 28%, because at some point she is being assaulted. No, I was gonna say not sexually assaulted, but no. At first she's being assaulted, but then it becomes sexual assault. But the sexual assault comes from the male main character, and that's where I draw the line of dark romances. Like, there can be dark things around them, but when the main character does bad things to the other main character, I'm like, nope, I'm out of here. That's also a thing I'm gonna talk about in the next book. So yeah, I decided to stop. And also because during this assault, the female main character was, like, horny because of that. and it made me feel icky, and I realized that this type of books where sex is linked to being like turned on when something bad happens to you, I'm like, that's not for me. So that's why I DNF'd it. And also I read reviews but also spoilers at the end, and I was like, okay, I'm glad I didn't read it. Not because of like dark things happening, but just where the plot was going. I wouldn't have liked the ending, so yeah, that's it. The next one is A Fate Forged in Fire. I DNF'd this one at 30%. I was quite excited. It was like a anticipated read for me, because Rachel from Raven Haired Reader read this one, like she had an arc and she really enjoyed this one, so I was quite excited to read it. But I DNF'd at 30% because I realized that the plot wasn't gonna be for me, and I also didn't really like the main character. So in this one you follow a main character who has been propheticized to be like the next queen, but she has been in hiding all her life up until that point. But now she's like, I'm gonna take back my throne, I'm gonna take back what's mine. So that's why also I was excited about this, because it's not like a chosen one trope where like, oh my god, I'm the chosen one. No, she knew for all her life that she was gonna be queen. But the thing is, for 30% you get the same dialogue or the same stuff like, no, I'm gonna be queen, I'm gonna be queen. Nothing new happened, and I didn't really like also, you can be like confident in yourself, but I felt like she was also quite entitled, and I didn't really like that. And also, weirdly, in this world, the kings and queens are like redhead, and that means that they are like at least from the same family, like maybe many generations ago, but they come from the same family. But the romantic partner of this main character is also a redhead, and I was like, isn't like a bit of incest? And I was like, maybe I'm just imagining things. So when I went to Goodreads, a lot of people were also talking about this plot point, and I was like, okay, I'm not the only one. So I thought that was a bit weird, but yeah, I decided to not continue it because I just didn't really like the dialogues and the main character, which is quite important when you read a book. My next DNF is House of Beating Wings. I DNF this one at 34%. I was quite excited. Firstly, I really enjoyed the covers, and in this one it's like kind of a Venice inspired story, at least Venice inspired city. And you follow a girl who's kind of a outcast, because she talked to a monster in the canal, and people were like, oh, she's weird. That's it. And at some point, again, there's like a kind of prophecy when somebody tells her, like, if you find, I think it was like 6 iron crows, you will become the next queen. And she doesn't ask any questions. She's like, oh yeah, when I find 6 crows, I'm gonna be a queen. And my main problem with this book was the pacing, because at 34%, nothing really happened. But also, she didn't, to me at least, she didn't have a lot of personality, but she didn't even think when somebody told her the prophecy, she didn't even reflect on that, she didn't ask any question, she was just like, okay, and things happened, and she was like, okay, and people told her things, and she was like, okay, yeah, I think to me she was too naive for this kind of story. To me, she needed to have a bigger or at least stronger personality for it to work, so that's why I DNF'd it. And the second to last book at DNF is Rose in Chains. I DNF'd this one at 35%. So this one is linked with the same reason as Leave Me Behind, because I DNF'd this book when the male main character slapped the female main character. But again, this book, since the beginning, you feel miserable reading this book, because it's just abuse. It's just a lack of body autonomy. It's just women being silenced. It's women being threatened, sexually threatened. And it was just so... yeah, it just feels so bad reading this book. And again, I don't read to feel these type of things. So at the beginning of the story, the main character, the female main character, honestly I don't remember her name, her kingdom has lost the battle, so the winning kingdom takes a lot of prisoner, and she's the princess, so she's like the highest prisoner they can have, and they group them, at least all the women together, and at first they washed them, they sterilized them. That was so fun to read, I loved that. Not because they were gonna be sold at an auction to be like slaves, but also sexual slaves. And the main character, since she's the princess, she's gonna go for the highest bid. And also they didn't want her to talk, so since in this story they have powers, she couldn't open her mouth, she couldn't talk, and I was like, okay, great. At first she was sold to somebody who wanted to rape her, that's why also all the women are sterilized. But then she's bought by the male main character, and yeah, at some point he slaps her, and I was like, you're done. You're done. I was not interested to continue to read this kind of story. I was not enjoying the story. So yeah, and also I think Julie Soto is not a writer for me. I read Forget Me Not, hated this book. I didn't like the characters, I didn't like the sex scenes. To me, the guy was like, no, I didn't like any of the thing about this story, and I have a hard time understanding why people love Forget Me Not. But I just think that Julie Soto is not for me, and that's okay. But yeah, this one, no thank you. And lastly, one of my biggest disappointment, because I read this book when it was indie published, and then when it was traditionally published, I decided to buy this version, and I bought this one when I went to London at the beginning of the year, and it's Heavenly Bodies. I DNF this one at 48%, and I knew it was gonna be different since from the first chapter, because, and it's gonna be a spoiler because it's in the first chapter, but in the indie version, I went back to my Kindle to search the indie version, because I was like, am I misremembering things? But that was not the case. In the indie version, the main character, the female main character, escapes from her kingdom. She's a princess, she escapes from her father, from her kingdom, and she decides to find refuge in another kingdom, and they decide to do an alliance together. But in the traditional version of this book, she's been kidnapped. And one thing I'm tired of in romantasy books is female main character being kidnapped. Especially since in the indie version of this book, I was so glad that at least something original happened. And that, again, the woman had agency, but in the traditional version of it, she didn't have any agency because she has been kidnapped. Stop kidnapping women, please! Like, I was so disappointed because to me the indie version stood out because of that, but then the traditional version just became like every other book you could have read. So yeah, she's been kidnapped by the kingdom that she found refuge in the indie version, so I didn't see the point of being kidnapped. I didn't add anything to the story. And also, maybe this one I'm misremembering, but I felt like the zodiac aspect of the story was much more prominent in the indie version than in this one. And that's why I kept also reading. I was like, maybe it will happen later, maybe later. And I was at 48%. I was like, actually, I'm not enjoying reading this book. And it was also a big book. I think it's more than 500 pages, so I read quite a lot before saying I give up. But yeah, I sadly gave up, which is a shame, but that's life. But yeah, that's 10 books I recently DNF'd. Let me know if you have read them, if you have DNF'd them, if you have different opinion as me, that's also okay. But yeah, that's the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!